great Brad Graham is joining us tonight, and I'm fired up, so fired up. I love Brad. Brad does an amazing job covering the Niners. Ran into him and his kid the other day at practice. I guess it was a few weeks ago now. Kid's got a big smile. He's all happy. Hey, there he is.
What's up, Larry?
What's going on, man?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Oh, man, I was just telling the story how we ran into you and your kid at camp, and just, I just love that, man. It's very cool. Dads and sons getting to spend some time together. We all work so hard, but it's one of the joys of life, being able to kind of hang out at Niner camp with your kid. He had a big smile. He'd gotten an autograph that day. He was fired up. That's the good stuff, huh?
Oh, absolutely. He got the Brock Purdy that day. That was one of the better days for anyone who's ever been to a 49ers camp before. It's, they do the autographs at the end of the practice. And, when Brock Purdy comes over, George Kittle, Fred Warner, oh, man, the kids are hyped, right? Well, Brock Purdy's walking over, and he's kind of angling away from my son. And he goes, "You," points right at my son. He's like, "You're first," because he was wearing the Brock Purdy jersey. And then he gets the big autograph on the back. Oh, he was loving life. He was glowing. It was a great time.
That is awesome. Who's Brad Graham? You say, for some of you don't know. Come on, you know Brad. He's basically the SF Niners on YouTube, which is a huge success and does an amazing job covering the 49ers on multiple platforms. Has a phenomenal YouTube channel. And has spent an awful lot of time watching the Niners at camp and is immersed in all the topics. So, Brad, why don't we get into it? What jumped out to you today? I mean, there were some dramatic moves today. Adrian Martinez, new quarterback. Sincere McCormick, a new running back. Jordan Jefferson, a new defensive tackle. They didn't lose Sebastian Valdez, which was great. Drew Moss, you're pumping up of Drew Moss's great highlights. I think helped him get on this roster. Good job there. But what stood out to you today? I mean, there was a number of moves, and we could probably talk about a number. I was just talking about JJ right before you came on. Lynch and Shanahan, gave us kind of the latest, but there's not a lot of meat on that bone right now. It seems like a lot of the same stuff that we've been talking about all summer. What stood out to you today?
I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was Evan Anderson getting released. I wasn't anticipating that. Now I understand why the San Francisco 49ers put in the claim for the defensive tackle, Jordan Jefferson, who was coming from the Jaguars, who was released. And obviously has that fourth round pedigree, whereas, Evan Anderson was a UDFA, but we know he played some meaningful snaps last year for the 49ers. And he played pretty well. I honestly thought throughout training camp he showed flashes. I know Evan Anderson was missed a period of time due to injury, so I don't know if maybe there's something that's going on with something that's lingering, or maybe just getting back into shape. But I was kind of surprised by that particular move, but I understand it. I get why the 49ers went that route. But overall, a lot of things went down today, but some of the things that really stood out to me were some of the good news. Upton Stout returning to practice today. Jordan James, the running back out of Oregon, returning to practice today. We haven't seen him since the first day of pads after he broke his finger. So that's some good news. I'll take some good news. So those are some of the things that stood out today, with also Sebastian Valdez coming back to the practice squad. A lot of different things.
A lot of things today. MVS was added. Marquez Valdez Scantling, who, ex-wide receiver, has got some speed and has got some ability to stretch the field. He's not the greatest ball skills guy. He's been a little inconsistent, but he's definitely, he's worked with Kubiak before. He's familiar with the system. I think that has a lot to do with why he was the guy. What do you think of MVS coming over? And I guess, right, Brad, he's a full go week one. I would imagine you're probably going to see a lot of him.
Yeah, I think MVS is one of those moves where I think you understand it. When you look at the 49ers wide receiver room, you've got Brandon Ayuk on PUP, Demarcus Robinson suspended for 3 games. Jacob Cowing goes to IR today. Jauan Jennings, as we all know, is dealing with the calf and maybe some other things. And so there's not a lot of available options. I mean, even their young, promising rookie, Jordan Watkins has a high ankle sprain. So not a lot of available options. And so when the 49ers go out and got MVS after he was released from the Seattle Seahawks, it wasn't necessarily a move where I'm jumping up and down and saying, oh, this is the move to take the 49ers over the top. To me, it's one of those moves where I understand it, considering he can play a role where he could get anywhere from 300 to 400 yards receiving, kind of similar to what he did last year with the Saints. I will say, though, for whatever reason, I it's not like I follow Marquez Valdez-Scantling's career all that closely, but I did notice him last year. He was flashing. He was making some plays. And so I thought it was an interesting move. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I understand the move. I think that it fills a need, and you're getting a veteran guy who can probably plug and play pretty quickly. So, and I think that's a lot of the considerations there. And on top of that, he's probably cost effective. So fills a bunch of different needs for the 49ers. We'll see how he fits into this role. But, the 49ers got guys like Robbie Chosen back onto the practice squad, Russell Gage back on the active roster. I was actually surprised, Larry, that they let Russell Gage go initially, but it sounds like they needed to shift some things around. He's back on the roster. So we'll see. We'll see. The 49ers wide receiver room right now is Ricky Pearsall and a bunch of other guys. So we'll see how it goes when the season starts.
Well, Kendrick Bourne was released by the Patriots, but I don't think he's been the same since he tore the ACL. Mayoko reported that the Niners have a high level of interest in Bourne. I think I would temper that. I mean, I know another guy who knows the system, but I mean, there's some good young receivers, I think, that I would rather take a look at. If you're just you've already got a lot of veteran receivers. You might as well, since you got a couple openings, take one flyer on a young receiver that you liked coming out in the draft. It seems like that's, that there's nobody really knows who's going to adapt to the NFL at the receiver position well, as opposed to it's going to take them a couple years. We see first round picks that it takes 2-3 years to adjust. And then sometimes we see guys come out of nowhere and they just immediately hit the ground running. So if they could find the right young receiver, I'd love to see them take a shot on a young prospect.
Yeah, I think you and I think a lot alike, Larry. We like to develop those young and up and coming players, and any chance you can fit them into a roster spot, more than happy to oblige.
Adrian Martinez, what do what's your read on the Bradley and Mordecai, how they're playing their hand of cards there? They went with two quarterbacks, which I think a lot of us expected, right? Brock and Mac, and then they cut both Bradley and Mordecai, and they have their IR bound. They said they wanted a quarterback on the practice squad, so they picked up Adrian Martinez today, who I think is a pretty good quarterback coming off of a nice little run in the UFL for Birmingham. Is that you think that's the end of the road for Bradley and Mordecai, or do you expect those guys will be here on the injured list all year? How do you think the quarterback position behind the front, the first two, is going to play out?
I would have to assume that both Bradley and Mordecai eventually get waived with an injury settlement, and then maybe somewhere down the road have the potential chance to return to the practice squad. I mean, when I look at Adrian Martinez, I look at a guy that was with the Jets last year, and coincidentally enough, of course, who's with the Jets last year? Robert Saleh. So I have to assume there's some vouching going on for needing a scout team quarterback. And I think one of the things when you look at having a scout team quarterback or a guy who is going to be on the practice squad, he's 6'1", 220 pounds, but he can move. And the 49ers, when you look at some of the potential opponents that they will play, whether, during the season or maybe in the playoffs, maybe having a bit of a dual threat on a guy on your practice squad who's going to be emulating a lot of the opposing quarterbacks might be a benefit. Or maybe there's just something that they liked because, like you mentioned, he was the UFL MVP last year, UFL champion, all UFL team. So he really, and also he was also the UFL rushing leader, which is a crazy stat for a quarterback. So I'm sure there's something there. And I'm sure that the 49ers also, again, have Robert Saleh, who they can lean on for some insight on him. In regards to Mordecai and Bradley, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we haven't seen the last Tanner Mordecai. He seems to find his way back on the 49ers roster. So we'll see if he comes back. But yeah, I'm curious about Adrian Martinez to see how he fits with the 49ers.
I think you did a video the other day where you embedded Cowherd and Cosell. Did you do that?
Yeah,
the other day?
did.
And, Cowherd was just desperate to lead Cosell to Brock Purdy is this and that. And Cosell was just like, I watched, 250 snaps of him the other day, and he is a very good quarterback, and then went out and just kind of backed it all up and just left Cowherd just totally speechless. My hope for this season for the 49ers is that they're going to be a good team. And I think and there's a lot of unknown here, right? There's a lot of unknown. And there's some factors working against them that we'll get to in just a second. But one thing that is overwhelming to me is that Brock Purdy is part of the solution. He's not part of the problem. He's definitely going to, whatever they do this year, he's going to be the reason why. I think he looks really sharp on the field. He's looked good the entire time he's been with the Niners, but to me this summer he looks like he's taken it to a different level.
I would have to agree with you. I think one of my favorite things to watch at 49ers training camp this year was the Brock Purdy to George Kittle connection. It just felt like it was different. I don't know how to explain it. We've seen Brock Purdy and George Kittle in multiple camps together, so it's not like it was our first time. But when we were both at training camp, and I'm sure you saw it too, those guys were automatic. It was like there was a different connection between George and Brock than almost any other player. Now, granted, there was a phenomenal connection between Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall, right? Ricky Pearsall also really had a strong camp, making a lot of plays, showing that he can get open over the middle and making some tough plays over the middle as well. And that rapport was really starting to build. But really watching George and Brock work together, it almost got to a point where it felt automatic. And I've been telling people, Larry, I know a lot of people are playing fantasy these days. I'm like, this is the year to draft George Kittle high. I think this could be one of, if not George Kittle's best season with the San Francisco 49ers. Because again, just kind of like what we already talked about, the wide receiver room and kind of the group of people that is being put together there. George Kittle is your wide receiver one, in my opinion, on the San Francisco 49ers right now. I do think Ricky's going to have a big year, but watching Brock and what I really liked about Brock too, some of the things that really stood out to me was he felt more consistent on his deep ball throws, especially as training camp went on. And I know, Larry, from both of us being at training camp in the last couple of years, it hasn't been the most automatic thing. It's something where ever since he's came back from that UCL surgery, it just kind of felt like he was trying to find that spot, that touch, trying to find that right placement on those deep ball throws. And then he started connecting to Jordan Watkins, and he started connecting to Ricky Pearsall. And it just felt like that's the next part of his game where he can really start to elevate. I think we are all in the firm belief that Brock Purdy is deadly when it comes to short to intermediate, whether either inside the hashes, outside the numbers. Brock Purdy can deliver the football wherever he needs to, whether it's with anticipation, whether baiting linebackers with his eyes and slipping it right on that backside. I think there's multiple ways that Brock Purdy wins, but I think if he can really take the deep ball game to a next level, I think it really opens up everything. And especially you bring back CMC into the mix, there's going to be a lot of people watching for CMC. And I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for other players to make some big plays deeper downfield.
I think late in the year, we're going to have a hard time believing that early in the year they had no options, because late in the year there could be lots of options. And Watkins, I think, is going to be a big part of what they do this year. He just, you're right. I mean, Purdy to Watkins was a thing this summer. Watkins can separate down the field. Purdy has been looking for a receiver who can separate down the field. He will put it on you if you can separate down the field. Watkins is going to gain that separation. He's going to see the football. And then it's just, I think it's either going to be a story about him dropping the ball or he's had a great rookie year. Because I think you're going to see Purdy take shots down the field to him. JJ, how is the JJ thing going to work out? Are the Niners going to, one thing Lynch said today, he said, Grant asked the question, hey, are you guys, in negotiations with this guy and his agent, or are you just waiting for him to return? And John's like, we don't like to do this stuff publicly. But then he said, we have negotiated with him throughout the offseason. He said that. So there could be an announcement at any point of some kind of tinkering to the deal that helps everybody save face and move on. I can't believe that they're going to rip up the base for 2025. And I can't believe that Rosenhaus would allow his guy to not be a free agent in March of 26. So I don't know if there's an actual deal to be had there. But the other concern is JJ's very prideful. And are you going to make him lose face in a room that you're now going to ask him to be a leader in? So I think I think that Lynch and Shanahan are aware of all of these factors. So how this thing comes to an end is going to be very delicate, and it's going to be very interesting. How do you think? How do you think this eventually ends?
That's a great question, because I think there are multiple outcomes, but it does feel like, based on what John Lynch said today, I mean, he said point blank, we're not trading JJ.
Right.
Now, he did admit to, yes, there was a trade request. Obviously, that was walked back after it was initially reported from Adam Schefter. But with kind of the transparency in that regard that was shared today, he also said we're not doing it. And that's my biggest takeaway from what John Lynch had said, is that it really came across like the only option for JJ in 2025 is to suit up and play for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, is that under a new contract? Is that under a tweaked contract that allows him to be a free agent in 2026? Can they add incentives? Can they build up the base? Can they shift some more money towards the guaranteed aspect of things? Because I think back to when Raheem Mostert kind of went through a little bit of a negotiation. It was just kind of shifting some of that language to more guaranteed dollars. And so maybe it could be something like that. But if I had to guess, I would have to assume JJ is going to be playing with the 49ers this season, because again, I don't think the 49ers can really, they're afforded the ability to not have JJ unless they trade JJ for another wide receiver. But with Jauan, we saw his emergence last year. He played team in general, and he really embodies that tough, hard-nosed, I'm going to block you 10 yards downfield and then put you on your back, or even into a Gatorade bucket on the side of the field, as we've seen him do before. I would have to assume JJ is playing for the 49ers this year. And I don't know, man. I think this is one of the more interesting situations that the 49ers have been through in recent memory, because I feel like we've at least kind of known more generally what has been transpiring with these potential negotiations, which I guess I'll classify it as. I would have to assume, though, that JJ is going to be playing for the 49ers this year and might have to be on a tweaked deal that gets him a little bit more incentive, maybe a little bit more guaranteed money, and then he will be able to test the market in 2026. And that's the incentive for JJ. We'll give you a little bit of a bump here, but ultimately you're playing for next year. You're playing for your next contract. And we're going to give you the opportunity to get targets, to get opportunities here. And maybe that's the incentive that the 49ers are looking at.
It's funny because a lot of people's solution to a happy locker room is pay everybody. But in this scenario, if you do pay them, there may be some offensive linemen that take offense to that and say, hey, what about McKivitz? What about our guy who actually blood, sweat, and tears. He was here all summer doing it
Yeah.
while the other guy was sitting it out. Our guy was here, and what, you didn't take care of him, and he thinks, and he looks great, by the way. And McKivitz says he wants to make the Pro Bowl. I mean, what if McKivitz comes out and makes the Pro Bowl? I mean, I don't know. There could be some salty guys in the room. They're usually pretty good at handling that. But we'll see. It's something to monitor for sure, because you got to have everybody. It's like the Warriors when they got Jimmy Butler. They were smart enough to not just be like, oh, we'll just get Jimmy Butler. They got Jimmy Butler and they extended him. They realized Jimmy Butler unhappy is not good. Ask Miami. But Jimmy Butler happy was very good for Golden State. I kind of feel the same way about Jennings. It's like Jennings in the room, you'd rather have him than not, but I want him happy in the room more than anything, because he is a leader. And you're going to ask him to lead this room. So you don't want him to lose face in that same room that you're asking him to lead. What do you think of Brian Robinson, Brad? I love this addition, but I want to see a lot of him this year, because I think it's imperative that if the Niners are going to win the Super Bowl, and I really want to see him do it. I know you do too. I think they got to get to the playoffs with a healthy CMC. I think that's got to be the plan. So you needed a real number 2 running back that's almost like a true one. And I was saying it yesterday. It's like, if you want to get a great number 2 running back, shop in the number 1 running back aisle, and you're almost guaranteed to get a good number 2. I think this is a good one, and the price was so cheap. What do you think of Robinson, and how many, how do you see the split going between the two of them?
First of all, what a steal of a deal. Getting
Sixth?
Robinson for a 6th,
yeah.
And the Commanders taking $1.25 million of his already cost-effective contract. I think it's a little bit north of $3 million overall. So the 49ers get the Commanders to take some of that contract. They give a 6th in order to obtain Brian Robinson Jr., who has been a starter in this league. And I think when you look at that running back room, at least the tandem of CMC and Brian Robinson, the blueprint that I look at is what they're doing over there in Detroit with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. If you want to talk about a split, and you want to talk about a situation where keeping guys fresh and being able to use both, I think that's a nice blueprint. Gibbs, obviously the electric running back, all the speed in the world, can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's going to make guys miss. He can do all that in the open field. And then you bring in the bruiser in David Montgomery, obviously in this situation, Brian Robinson, who can just plow between the tackles. He can but to give him his credit, he can do some stuff outside the tackles. He's a pretty solid back. I like him in those base down, short yardage type goal line situations. That's where I would like to see a lot of Brian Robinson Jr. But I think, the combination of both, again, I think like you mentioned it too, it's like you got to keep CMC healthy. And I know Kyle Shanahan has historically had CMC in that workhorse role, but I understand why. Like, I get it. CMC does it all. He's a great pass blocker. He catches out of the backfield, and he can run it anywhere, outside the tackles, in between the tackles, doesn't matter. So I can understand why it's very challenging to bring CMC off the field, because I remember when the 49ers traded for him, I said that this guy reminds me of Stephen Curry. And some people might be like, well, what are you talking about? The gravity that CMC creates reminds me of the gravity that Stephen Curry creates, where defenses are keyed. Where's this guy? Even when the ball isn't in their hands, you have to know where this player is at all times, because he can hurt you at any point. And so I'm excited about that element. But hey, what would they look like if they're both on the field? But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's a good situation for the 49ers. I think trying to keep CMC fresh for the season will do them wonders in the second half of the season. And, we've all heard it, Larry. A lot has been made of their easy schedule and all of those different types of things. At the end of the day, just put yourself in a position to make the playoffs, put yourself in a position to win the NFC West, and having a healthy CMC, I think is going to be a big reason why they'll have a shot to do that this year.
Yeah, I mean, CMC is really good. I mean, he is really, really good. And if you can keep him healthy, great. But maybe ride him a little not as hard as you did a couple years ago. One last thought, and it's time for our 49ers stat of the day. I always come up with one stat of the day that I think is defining. And I saved a doozy for you, Brad. This is a true doozy. If you ask me, like, how do you feel about this year for the 49ers? I'm a little torn, right? Because they do have so many young players, but they do have so many great players. And last year, it seemed like the schedule was just overwhelmed them, where this year the rest element is far more in their favor. I think that's kind of an element of football that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's a major factor. But I'm a little uneasy about this team, and I was trying to think why. Why am I uneasy about this team? Because I like a lot of these young players. I've been talking up a lot of these draft picks, and they're clearly healthy. They've had a good summer. The schedule's favorable. Why am I a little uneasy? And it's really leads to our 49ers stat of the day. The 49ers have $42.8 million right now in available cap room. It's the third most in the NFL. Right. They're claiming that they probably want to roll over all of it, if not most of it, because they got big Purdy payments coming in the future. So $42.8 million they have an available cap room, third most in the NFL. And then I read this morning that the Niners have an NFL high $96.6 million in dead cap. So it doesn't take a genius to go to abovethecap.com or whatever and look that the NFL's base cap is $279.2 million, roughly $280 million. And then it doesn't take a genius to add up $42.8 million and $96.6 million and realize that the Niners have already, they've got $139.4 million of their $279.2 that they're not using. And they're trying, and I looked at the percentage of it, it's 49.9%. The Niners are trying to win the 2025 Super Bowl in a year where they're using less than half of their total salary cap on player salaries in a league where there are some teams that are spending 90% on player salaries. They're spending 49.9% on player salaries. So every time we hear Shanahan talk, he's like, hey, we just hope to make it to the playoffs. And Lynch is like, hey, it could be a bumpy ride. I think the fan base is very much, Brad, like, hey, last year was an aberration and the injuries. And this year, we're going to be healthier and we're going to be better. And we got this young class of guys and, new era. But it's going to be a massive challenge to compete for even a playoff berth. When you look at the fact that they're only spending 49.9% of their total cap, and some teams are spending nearly double. What do you think?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Larry. A lot of these moves have put a lot of young players in a position to play a lot of early snaps. I mean, look at Marquise Siegel, 5th-round draft pick, has a chance to be a starter at safety with Malik Mustafa starting the year on PUP. Upton Stout, probably going to be your starting nickel heading into this season. Now, granted, shout out to Upton Stout. I mean, that guy was just all over the field when my favorite thing about Upton Stout, not to go on an Upton Stout tangent, when the pads came on, he got better. That was my favorite thing about Upton and watching him in training camp this year. He was just flying around making plays in the run game. And that's where I was like, okay, yeah, this guy's going to start. So I feel good about that. You also look at guys, second-year player Ronaldo Green is going to be starting now, opposite side of Diamador Lenore. D. Winters, I know D is heading into year 3, but he hasn't played significant snaps. He's definitely going to be the starter opposite side Fred. Then you got Michael Williams, who's going to play a lot of snaps this year, the rookie that was drafted 11th overall. CJ West is expected to play a lot of snaps this year. Alfred Collins, a lot of rookies going to get some run out there for the 49ers this year defensively. So I think it's going to be an emphasis on the 49ers offense. So obviously we understand all the issues that are going on with the wide receiver room, but you mentioned it. Brandon Ayuk will be returning hopefully after week 4. You get Christian McCaffrey back and you got Brock Purdy. So you think that offense led by Kyle Shanahan can do a lot of work. And then you add Robert Saleh into the mix. One of my favorite things from training camp, Larry, was watching Robert Saleh cook.
Yeah.
Some of the alignments, and again, I had to be careful. I didn't want to say too much, but he was dialing it up, and we saw some glimpses of it in the preseason, but I don't even think we've seen all of it. And within that scheme that Robert Saleh was executing, Jason Pinnock really stood out to me with how they used him. Reminded me of Derwin James, of how they was used all over the formation, used everywhere, whether on the line of scrimmage, up the middle, in coverage, a lot of different things. So I get it. I understand. There definitely seems to be an element where the 49ers are trying to get a little bit more cost controlled. And I think it's more predicated on the cash spend, maybe less than the cap allowance that they have allotted to them. And obviously, like you mentioned, they do have to roll over a lot of that cap to next season. So I think it will be a challenge. I'm not banging the table like I have in years past where this is a guaranteed playoff team, Larry, but they have a chance. They have a shot. And just like any season, the biggest thing that is going to stop this team from getting to the playoffs is that blue tent. Injuries, Larry. If they can stay healthy, they have a shot. They really, really do. And I really believe that with what we've seen in training camp this year, we've seen the guys that have been out have been good. So if they can stay healthy and they can stay in a good spot within the division, start out hot with the win against Seattle week 1, I do think the 49ers will have a shot at the playoffs. I don't think it's as strong as like I mentioned, as years past, but I think there's room. We'll see though.
I always love rapping ball with Brad Graham. He is fantastic. I got one last one on your way out. We're past 7. My wife's going to give me a dirty look here and say, go pick up your kid from football practice. So I'm going to be hustling out here in just a second. And if I end abruptly and look kind of scared, the warden has come down. And no, I shouldn't say that. Honey, you're beautiful. You're not the warden. All right. One of my good buddies is always calling his wife the warden.
That's hilarious.
I mean, and when she comes in the room too, he's like, "Oh, the warden's here." She hates it, absolutely hates it. But I've got to ask you, because you were big on Drew Moss and I was big on Connor Colby, and the Niner fans have been ripping the tar out of the 49ers for not rebuilding their offensive line. And what did they do in last year's draft? They got Don Pooney, the best offensive lineman in the entire draft. And what did they do this year? They used very little draft capital, but they added 2 really good, I think, future starter interior players. And after talking to Connor Colby, I've yet to talk to Drew Moss, but after talking to Colby, I am absolutely convinced he is going to be a plug-and-play starter. And I know Barch is in there now, but I think Colby and Pooney are going to be the guard tandem of the future. And I think Colby, Moss, and Pooney, I think is going to be the interior of the future. You played offensive line. I want 2 thoughts. One, what you think of the long-term future of Moss and Colby. And 2, I don't think Burford or Pleasance can stand up as pass rushers. I don't think either are pass rushers. I think the Niners have 2 guys, and it makes them feel better that they've got 2, but I think they've got 0. I don't think either of those guys can do the job, and I want to believe in them, but I'll defer to you. You played this position. You played offensive line, and you're unbiased here. Is Burford and Pleasance, are they quick enough to block the speed rushers that reside in this league? And tell me what you think on Colby and Moss, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, so starting with Burford and Pleasance, I think they're serviceable. And I think that's why they have been able to kind of lock down these swing tackle roles, both left and right. I prefer that they are actually both guards. I look at Pleasance. He reminds me of a young Colton McKivitz. You know, Colton McKivitz was drafted and he was originally played at guard, and then they kicked him out to tackle to kind of be like a backup guy, just to see where he could make the roster. And slowly over time, McKivitz has developed and obviously earned himself a starting role. I kind of look at those guys as their probably best fit is on the interior, but they have serviceability on the outside. And with the 49ers' current depth, they don't have any better options at tackle. They brought in Andre Dillard. He lasted what, Larry, 2 practices before
it was a good financial arrangement for Andre.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't love it. I'll be honest with you. I was really hoping, I was crossing my fingers that Esapole slipped past,
Yes. Where'd
the
he
New
go,
York
Jets?
He went the Jets. They're sitting in that 7 slot.
He
And
went to Chabot, and you were all over him. He I think he's got a lot of talent. There were a couple tackles. I was thinking, I had the list here. Wait a second. I got to ask you about the couple of these tackles. I went through every roster to just take a look, of course, because I'm that sicko. I know it's a problem. It's a real problem.
How about that past you, Larry?
I had Holland Pierce. This is my list of guys: McClendon Curtis, Esapole, Logan Brown, Holland Pierce, Caleb Etienne, Trent Brown. Oh, I know who I liked. I like Javon Foster from Missouri. I don't know if he went anywhere, but I thought he was a decent tackle once upon a time. But tell me what you think of Moss and Colby down the road, and then we'll call it right there since we're past.
Yeah, for sure. So, as you know, Larry, I'm a big fan of Moss. Appreciate the shout out the other night on the show. That was pretty cool. So with Moss, man, it stood out to me at 49ers training camp. I remember the rep that I saw in team, like vividly, where you remember early on when pads came on, CJ West was destroying everyone in one-on-ones. Remember that? He was just blowing through everyone.
Yeah.
It didn't matter even if it was Pooney.
Ragdolling guys.
Exactly. And see, he gets Moss the first time, pushes him back with a nice bull rush. After that, Moss got CJ West the rest of those one-on-ones. And then in team, you had a rep where CJ West was in the 3 tech against Moss. Moss shoves CJ West out and around the pocket. You have a looping Robert Beal coming in on a stunt. Moss plants his 2 fists into Robert Beal's chest and puts him on his back. I'm like, oh, that's not normal. Not only did he have the cerebral ability to pick up the stunt, he put Beal on his back and took care of West all in one like sweeping motion. And that's really the first thing where I was like, oh, we might have something here. And then as it continued to progress, you see it in the preseason. He has a advanced nature to him. It kind of reminded me of Dominic Pooney. I don't think he has the same skill set as Dominic Pooney, but when you look at those small things, the technical elements, the cerebral ability of being able to pick up and be aware and clue in on stunts, he has it. And that was really something that I liked. I really liked his ability to reach 3 techs. He has good feet, good base, good hips. I mean, it was just a progression, and he just kept checking every box. So Drew Moss, gotta tip the cap. Oh yeah,
watch that. This is the video that Brad put out on his channel. I'll go back to the front of it so people can see from the front. Here he is, 55.
Club.
I mean, anytime you can get the D lineman down on the ground, that's pretty good.
Yeah, the defensive lineman goes for the long arm, and you see as almost instantaneously he goes for the club, and it completely takes the defensive tackle off his balance, and then he just drives him into the ground. It's beautiful. It really is. That's high-level stuff. Those are some of the things that we look for when we're watching Trent Williams film. When we're watching Trent play, he's doing these types of things. He's taking the technique to the defensive tackles. So I really loved it from Drew Moss, and I do think Connor Colby is also a really, really solid prospect. I mean, shout out to Colby. He earned his way up into the starting role at one point in the preseason. I do think there is a little refinement there for Connor Colby, but I think that he can absolutely get the job done. And the combination of those two, who knows, man? If the 49ers hit on future starters with a 7th and an undrafted pick, tip of the cap, John Lynch, and whoever made those recommendations and selections, congratulations. That was phenomenal. Absolutely loved it.
You also put this out. This is really good too. This is Brad putting. Now this one I love because he smothers him and he puts him on the ground. Look at Moss playing right guard here, 55. Watch this rep. Now he showed good movement, but then he stays with him, stays slide, and then keep driving. Look at that. Oh, there you go.
And the best part is the ref had to run over and say, "Get off this guy." And you know, Larry, it is like a badge of honor when you put a guy on his back and you just lay on him and you force him to like wiggle out. It's just like, I own you. It's like, it's
awesome.
the best, and so those are the small things that really stood out to me about Drew Moss. And I'm really excited that the 49ers kept him, because I wasn't sure that they were.
Brad Graham does a great job. Brad, tell people now. I mean, you've got so many more followers than me, and so many more subscribers, and all that. You've been doing this a long time and doing it really well. So I'm telling people check out Brad, but of course, Brad probably should be telling people to check out us here at KNBR. But go ahead, Brad. Tell people, what if they're stumbling onto this for the first time, because people do kind of watch in an uneven pattern. Tell them, what kind of content you put out and where they can find it.
Yeah, I mean, from content, you can go from memes to in-depth offensive line breakdowns. That's one of the things that I try to cover on the SF Niners on any platform, is just try to give you all things football, whether it's creative, whether it's edits, whether it's film breakdowns, whether it's news updates. Try to do my best to keep you covered on all things San Francisco 49ers. And again, shout out to you, Larry, man. Appreciate you having me on. Always a good time hopping on KNBR with you.
Oh, dude, you put out a lot of great content. You did a recent interview with Bryce Huff. Or is that not recent? You just have that pinned.
That was right before
camp. Okay, so check that out. But Brad talks to a lot of guys. You've had Ayuk on the show, and Brad puts out just a lot of great stuff. Thanks for coming on Niners Nightly, man. Everybody check out Brad. Hit like and subscribe here at Niners Nightly. Thanks to everybody for watching. That's going to do it for us. I'm back with you tomorrow night. Tomorrow night at 6:00, and then Friday will not be with you because I'll be filling in from 10 to 2 for Greg Papa. So join me in the daytime, 10 to 2 on Friday. We'll talk a lot of Niners in the daytime with Greg Silver. Fired up for that. But Brad, have a great night, and thanks to all you guys. Thanks for tuning into KNBR. He's the best. Have a great night, everybody. Peace.